there is some good science to show us, in fact, how sound stimulates and changes our brainwave state. We do it through a system called binaural beating, where we put different phases of sound, a slightly out of phase sound in one ear than the other. And the brain, in the brainstem, detects these differences, and it gives rise to a rhythmic pulsing, a sensorial rhythmic pulsing. That's basically what the auditory community has been using to test for different kinds of hearing loss and so forth. Mr. Monroe discovered that that same stimulus can be used to alter consciousness because it can actually alter the brainwave state of an individual. When Bob Monroe discovered that these different sounds created various thresholds of altered states of consciousness, it came to a point where he needed to assign labels to these. We could call one red and one blue, or one Philadelphia and one Kansas, or, whatever he wanted. He just invented a set of numbers, okay? And so he calls it focus 10, focus 12, focus 15, focus 21. And typifies different kinds of experiences and different kinds of physiological states that people have in these various levels of consciousness. But they're completely arbitrarily assigned. When you move beyond the earthly experience of consciousness into that realm of human existence, but still within the Earth life system, we call that area focus 27, okay? But you can call it anything you want, and it matches up with a lot of other cosmologies. It's just the terminology I use is this area called focus 27. And within that area of focus 27, we have something called the Healing and Regeneration Center. Now, although much of the language that I will be using talks about physical things, like this is a physical hotel and conference center. So when I refer to the Healing and Regeneration Center, it sounds like with my words that I'm talking about a physical place, okay? We don't think that's the situation. What we think of it is as a process. It is a process that takes place, and we imbue that process with the concept of physical structure, which isn't too different than what we're doing right now. Is not this, in some cosmologies, an idea in the mind of God, and we are imbuing it with its own physical reality through our state of consciousness. The point being is that, let's take a little trip. Imagine that you have died and you've gone through that process comfortably, and you've gone down the magic tunnel of light that everybody hears about, and there's your Aunt Mary in her apron and a plate full of chocolate chip cookies. Oh, Aunt Mary, I've been waiting to see. Do you think she's been standing there all that time waiting for you? Those cookies should get stale after a while. Well, obviously, we have created that vision, and that might be the big we instead of the we personally, ego I, created that vision because it's an accepting process, a loving coming together again. Gee, this is really great, okay. But it's a projection. I mean, scientists tell us that right now these are projections that I as a human have a certain set of senses about me, and I'm creating what I think is out there in the physical world. If a dog comes in here, they have a different idea. If a moth is in here, if a bat is in here, they perceive this differently based on the senses with which they are equipped. And so you ask the rhetorical philosophic question, well, which one is the real one, right? Well, obviously the one I see is the real one, But it should arm us intellectually to understand there's probably a Cartesian reality, an ultimate firmament, probably, but it's not like we'll ever be able to prove it because we know that what's going on, and I think I see you for what you are, is just a projection on my mind's eye. So too after the death process, apparently. So this thing we call the Healing Regeneration Center, this physical center, we see as a process, okay? And apparently this process is available through exploring in deep meditative states and also the out-of-body experience. Now, I said in my abstract that I sent into the conference organizers that the Monroe Institute doesn't, offer you an out-of-body experience. It doesn't say, come on in, have an out-of-body experience, because we understand that that's part of the subjective concepts of what happens to you. The thing that we do is we set up a very interesting pattern of behaviors, and we demand that you behave in these patterns. And when you get down the row, the only way you're going to be able to do this is to have been out of your body. So you stop thinking about getting out of your body and start thinking task orientation. So let's get in a little deeper then and talk about what we did in our study. Many of the things that I did for several years involving quantitative analysis was to try to demonstrate or prove the efficacy of the hemisync process, measuring physiology, paying attention to what people's brainwave measurements were, what their physiological changes were. Now, the question then becomes, when you're in these states of consciousness, what's more important, that your physiology has changed, that your brainwaves have changed, or what's really going on with you? What's really happening to you? How much can we know, how much can we learn from discovering the neurological underpinnings of changing states of consciousness? Well, it's something that we encourage outside researchers to do. We have a very active exterior research program done at universities and private labs where we support them with providing them with hemisync materials. But in the Monroe Institute, I thought that we should sort of, being the director of research, I got to think this, that we should sort of move beyond that limiting concept, let others on the outside be demonstrating the validity of the physiological changes that take place. But what we were more interested in are the adventures people are having. And is there any meaningfulness, any, might I say, agreed upon picture of reality among these groups of people, or is it simply something that they make up as they go along? And I really didn't have an investment in this. I'm sort of a make it up as you go along guy, and so that would be okay too. I mean, there's a certain amount of agreement as to what this room is made up. Is it possible that there is an agreement to the processes that go on beyond death? I'm not saying rooms and locations and objects, but processes that go on beyond death. Is there an agreement to that, or is it something that we all individually experience? Well, how do you find that out? Well, you have to ask a bunch of questions. You have to send some people out into those realms, and you have to then question them about what their experiences were, and then you have to keep track of a lot of data, scientific stuff. Okay? So with that in mind, that's where we're going to move to now, is looking at these people.